What's up, people? Welcome back. Well, this is by request to take a look at Linux Deepin for 2014, or Deepin Linux, or whatever it's called. Before we get started, let me just say that this is by far the prettiest operating system I have ever seen. And unfortunately, this is one operating system based on my tests where you won't have to worry about receiving any speeding tickets. Alright, let's get started. I tested this inside a virtual machine and actually did an install using Ubuntu 14.04 as the host for the virtual machine. Now, Deepin Linux is a Chinese distribution that is based on the latest Ubuntu 14.04. This is the install here. I must say this is really one of the coolest looking install start screens that I've seen in a long time. I think this is the coolest one. I think this is the second coolest install process would have to be Zorn. But I did like the installation process for Deepin Linux. I would recommend that you take a look at their website. This one, I believe, requires a minimum of 2 gigabytes of RAM, if not more. So this is definitely not for older computers. Alright, as you see here, as it boots up rather slowly, this didn't run as smooth as I would have liked in a virtual machine. Now, I know virtual machines, VMs, may not be the most ideal environment to test operating systems for Linux or for anything else. I get that. However, never had a problem running Ubuntu in a virtual machine. Never had a problem with Linux Mint, Zorn, OpenSUSE, and other Linux distributions, but this one felt very sluggish in a virtual machine. It looked pretty, but too slow for my taste. But let's go ahead and take a look at the installation process and see what we have. Okay, username, computer name, password, and retype password. Again, very, well, bluish, Windows-ish start screen, if I dare say that. This installation, the install process was designed for beginners in mind, there's no question. So they've done a pretty good job as far as the install process. Now, why they have a picture of a monitor that looks like a Mac, I'm not sure. Now, Linux Deepin has its own exclusive apps like the Linux or the Deepin Software Center. It has a modified application launcher. This one, I believe, came out last year or maybe 2 years ago. It's Deepin Movie Player. Again, everything is based on unique modifications by the Linux Deepin developer, simply called Deepin. Here we have the Deepin Music Player. Deepin Game Center. This one was unique but weird. Deepin Linux felt like a combination of Windows 8.1, Mac, and my Galaxy S4 in terms of operating systems. It seems like it felt like they took those three as part of a recipe and came out with this. It looks pretty, it's different, it's unique, but it doesn't quite, for me at least, it didn't quite blend all that well. Now, the install process took almost 15 minutes. It seemed a bit long, but once again, this has lots of eye candy. It's going to use up lots of resources, so it's understandable that this will take some time to install. Didn't notice any crashes or glitches or hiccups in the install process. It just felt sluggish and took a little bit longer than I would have liked. Alright, Deepin community. Don't know too much about the Deepin community or their blog, how helpful it would be for beginners. Alright, what I will do here, we don't have to look at the entire install process. Let me just say that it seemed easy easy enough. So if you are coming from a Windows environment and never used Linux before, I don't think you will have any problems as far as the install process. So for this, I give the developers of Deepin Linux, as far as the install process, I give them 2 thumbs up. Okay, once it's done installing, congratulations, you need to restart the computer to complete the installation. Reboot later or reboot now. This is about as newbie friendly as it gets. So as I stated, yeah, the install process was very, very nice. Let's go ahead and take a look at the desktop. Okay, so it rebooted. This is what you have. The following will guide you to learn how to use some new functions. At the bottom it says start or click I am older, exit directly. Older than what? The operating system? I didn't quite get this one. I mean, it's newbie friendly, but anyway, I thought this part was kind of weird. Alright, sliding the mouse to the upper left corner or clicking on the launcher icon, both can start application launcher. Again, these have what are called hot corners, similar to what you'd find in a default GNOME 3 or GNOME Shell desktop environment. Again, if you are new to this, I do appreciate the tutorial here on how to use, for the first time, Deepin Linux. This does have a search function on the desktop, so you can, for example, type in music or whatever, and it would get you to that application. Let's drag the other icon on the first icon to generate application group. Again, self-explanatory. Alright, this has the show hide control center from the right side, and no, Toss Today does not look like a horse. The application, the control panel, or whatever you want to call it, from the right side kind of reminded me of the Charms menu for Windows 8.1, which is fine. Now playing with this is where it kind of froze up on me here. Okay, so it froze up and I had to reboot. Again, the default desktop looks fine. Once again, running very slow. Right click to personalize your Linux Deepin. Alright, personalization such as Steam. Window, different colors, icon, different icon sets, wallpaper, a nice selection of wallpapers, fonts. There's no question, no doubt, that this is probably the most unique Linux operating system I have ever used, at least by the artistic value of this and quite simply just the wonderful aesthetics on what you see. I just wished it would have run faster in a virtual box. Now what I did do, I created a bootable USB stick and booted off of that. It did run a little better and it looked nicer. The resolutions appear to be correct, booting off the USB stick. So what I did, I went to the Deepin Software Center and I was looking to download and install a simple screen recorder, just to do a quick recording. And I went to the Deepin Software Center, downloaded Kazam, or at least searched for it, tried to download it, and download failed. Okay, let me try another one. So from Kazam I downloaded Simple Screen Recorder. The Software Center found it. Once again it said download fail. Well, I tried one more. Recorded my desktop. It found it, downloaded it, and it installed. It said, I think, install successful or something like that. Went to use it, didn't work. Okay, here you have default applications, reset, icons to the left. Again, this is pretty much self-explanatory. The icons here do remind me a bit of an iPhone, which is fine. Everything, again, quite did not work the way I wanted to, either in the VM environment or off a USB stick. Now, it's possible my machine just quite isn't fast enough or compatible with OS. I'm willing to accept that. I mean, I have a quad core, 6 gigs of RAM. You would think that would be sufficient, horsepower for this, as it were, but maybe it wasn't. All I'm saying is it was sluggish. Anyway, yeah, and not being able to download and install popular screen recording programs really kind of ticked me off, to be quite honest. All right, this is the install center here. Again, very easy to use. This is where I tried to download and install Kazam. And it gives a nice description here. So I clicked the download arrow, of course. Clicked on installation. And it just simply failed to download. I'm not sure why. You can't quite see it here, but right there it says download failed. Again, I tried Simple Screen Recorder and that didn't work either. So let's take a quick look at the Deepin music application. Very colorful, to say the least. Okay, I don't want to drag this on, so let me just end it here and give you my final thoughts about this. I wanted to like this. I mean, it's different, very unique in the same way that Windows 8 and 8.1 is completely different than what Windows 7 was, and maybe that's why I do like Windows 8.1, because it is completely different. But Windows 8.1 works completely. This one, at least in a virtual machine or booting off a USB stick, just did not work for me. I wanted to like this, and I was willing to give it a chance, but being unable to install 3 popular pieces of software, screen recorders, that was it. That's when I gave up. And at that point, I'll be honest, at that point, I was not in a good mood wasting over an hour with this operating system. Once again, maybe it's just my, desktop specifications. Maybe it isn't good enough, and I'm willing to accept that. But after about an hour and not being able to install simple, popular applications, I basically had one question for Deepin Linux. How do you say FU in Chinese?